Zaku Baruch. Okay, hello everyone, good morning. So we mentioned the other day halacha regarding putting hot water into the Dafina. So I just wanted to expound on it because these next simanim also discuss it. So Rabbi Shalom Asas says, let's say you have on your hot plate two pots, one of, let's say, your Dafina and one of hot water. So they're the exact same heat because they're on the exact same fire. So he says that if you take the water and you pour it into your dafina, it's boiling water. This is your boiling dafina. So Rabbi Ovadia Yosef says you can't do that, even if they're both boiling, because when it's poured in the air, it loses some of its heat, and that's called irui mikli rishon, pouring from a first kli. A first kli is a first vessel that's on the fire. You're losing some heat there. You can't do that. Rabbi Shalom Asas argues and says, no, if even though, yes, when you're pouring you might lose a little bit, that's not considered enough. It's still very hot, and as long as it still has some heat, as long as it's still hot, this is the way Ashkenazim rule as well, you could pour it in. We said at the end, because of this machloket, you should only do such a thing if you really need to. Now, in an opposite situation, we're going to see how Rabbi Shalom Asas is more strict, and Rabbi Ovadia Yosef is more lenient. And the opposite situation is, let's say you're making an instant coffee. So now the whole thing here, also to zoom out on this whole thing with the pouring of the water, is the concept of yesh bishul achar bishul or en bishul achar bishul. Can you cook something twice? If I boiled up water, right? So I cooked the water. Now let's say it cools down. Can I boil it? If I boil it again, is that considered I recooked it? Or is it considered I already cooked this thing once? So now it's considered cooked, and let me do whatever I want with it. I could reheat it again, I cannot. Or once it gets cold and I reheat it, it's considered like I cooked again. I did like as if nothing happened beforehand. Now with something that's hard, it's like a piece of chicken. You cooked it, it's now cooked. It's never going to go back to that raw state. So that everyone agrees that en bishul achar bishul b'davar yavish, something that's dry, there's no considered recooking. You've already cooked it. Now you can reheat it or whatever, but the water, once it cools down, it's like it's never got warmed up before. And therefore, everybody says, yesh bishul achar bishul b'davar lach, something that's liquidy, it is considered recooking if you cook it again. And therefore, you're not allowed to recook. So therefore, if I have water, and even, it's a cold water for sure, is never cooked before, even hot water that was once hot, and now it's cold, and I put it onto my dafina, that's considered cooking. What do you mean? I once heated this up already. No, yesh bishul achar bishul b'davar lach, it's considered recooking again because it's water, it's still here. Okay, so now, let's say you have instant coffee. Instant coffee was already cooked before. The way that it gets to that granular state, not fresh coffee, that's never been cooked before. You can't make that type of coffee. So let's say you have instant coffee, it was already cooked before. So can I add hot water? How do I add hot water to that coffee to have that on Shabbat? So according to Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, it's a little bit more lenient because once I pour out of my hot water urn, which is called a kli rishon, once I pour out of it, that's called irui kli rishon. I'm pouring from that hot water, it loses heat, and that could go onto something that's already been cooked before. Whereas, according to Rabbi Shalom Asas, who says that type of pouring, that's not considered such a drop in heat. If it's not considered such a drop in heat, then I'm using a straight up kli rishon from the first vessel that's on the fire to put onto my coffee. That's considered like as if I'm cooking coffee for the first time, and it didn't go down in a level of heat. And therefore, says Rabbi Shalom Asas, you would need to put it into a second cup. And then from the second cup, pour on to your instant coffee. So that's that. Now, in general, because there's items like, let's say, tea leaves that was never cooked before, it's called kaleh bishul, something that's very easy to get cooked. So that you would need to use, according to everyone, a third cup. So let's say I have my water urn poured into a cup. I pour it into a third cup, and then I put my tea bag inside. That everyone says is okay. So personally, and I also suggest this, is that even for instant coffee, for anything, to always do it that way, because then you'll never make a mistake. Yes, for instant coffee, according to Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, you could just take it from the urn and like pour it right onto your coffee. According to Rabbi Shalom Asas, no, you need to do a second cup. So you have empty cup, pour your hot water in there, and then you could pour that onto the coffee in that next cup. And for a tea, you would need to do urn to cup to empty cup, then put your tea bag in. And I would suggest to do that for even the coffee, and then you're just covering yourself. You're going to the easiest way so that you know you're covered for tea, for coffees, for any hot water item. But, sorry? Milk into the coffee.
Then the water.
So that's from your second cleat to the thing. So for coffee, we said at the end, yes, technically. For a coffee, so the milk you're saying is something cold. And now, right, so that's a good question because it's going to still be boiling afterwards, right? Meaning,
It's not boiling, we never get to the point of boiling.
not boiling, but hot enough that your hands are going to go back. So because again, if you're putting a lot of milk and now it's cold, so what's that? So there's a difference here, right? If you're putting a lot of milk where you're pouring hot water into it, and now it's still going to be cold enough that I can still hold on to it regular, that's fine. You didn't cook anything. You cooled that heat down. But if I have a little bit of milk where I pour it in, it's still going to be hot. No, now I cooked that milk, right? So if it's in a third cup fully, or I pour the milk into that third cup, that's fine. But pouring from the second cup onto it, no. In that case, it will still be very hot afterwards. So best into the third cup and then put the milk into it. Okay, that's that for today. A few announcements. Mincha tonight. The first kli is the one that's on the fire, is your hot water urn. Exactly. Then I have you should have an extra little cup beside, exactly. You should have an empty cup beside the hot water urn, always. You pour your hot water in there. Now the cup that I want to make my drink in, pour it in there when it's empty, and then pour whatever you want inside.
So it's really the second cup.
It's really the second, that's an extra one, exactly. The third cup's going to be the one that you're drinking out of. Exactly. Yeah. Chazak. Mincha at 7:15. Unfortunately, we have the funeral today of a longtime member, Mr. Clement Levy. That's going to be at 3:30 today at the cemetery at Pardes Shalom again, the section. If anyone is able to come, please let me know. They do need a few for Minyan. There's an organization that tries to help with Minyanim that are going to send people, but if they don't need to send people, then they're not going to. So please let me know if anyone's able to come. And the Gemara Shiur tonight, Bezrat Hashem, it looks like it's going to be a 9 o'clock call. We might put it back to 8:30, but it should be only half an hour anyway. So Bezrat Hashem. Lastly, everyone's invited to breakfast after Tefillah, sponsored by the Lugassi family. Hazak Baruch Leilun Shema, your mother, Esther Bat Chana. It's going to be right here in the side room. Have a good day, everyone. Tana D'Eliyahu.